people were warning us that taking Goma too quickly could end up in a bloodbath. I was happy to hear that there were only 3,000 killed.
You think that Tshisekedi will be why will he be overthrown?
But he can't justify just losing 2 towns. His opposition is on his heels.
How long does Tshisekedi have before he's overthrown?
That can be a week, 2 weeks, 1 month, but it will happen, I think.
This is the very, very best. I introduce the very, very next. Big deal, you know this is the big league. Sanga mumihanda ya Kigali make a big fish. Word on the street turakaze. Habari gani mumeze mte. Dutse nshimi mana kuva honda muchiye. If you want the long form, come close mrabule. Wait, what?
The long form.
What did he say?
The long form.
What?
The long form.
The long form. The long form. Hello there. Our guest this week on the Long Form podcast is Marc Hoogsteyns. Marc, a veteran Belgian journalist, has just returned to Kigali from a 5-day trip to Goma, the M23-held capital of North Kivu Province DRC. We'll discuss what he saw in Goma and the state of the M23 after its recent victories, as well as what the rebels aim to do moving forward. We'll also try to predict what the future holds, not just for the M23 and the peoples of the Eastern DRC, but also the leadership in Kinshasa, as well as Bujumbura. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to make a deal with you. About 69.5% of you who watched this very podcast haven't hit the subscribe button yet. So, here's the deal I want to make with you. If you hit that subscribe button today, I promise you that my team and I will keep making the show better and better in every single way. So, go ahead and hit that subscribe button today. And now, let's get into the show. Mr. Marc, welcome to the Long Form.
Thanks.
There's something very special about you. What is special is that you are the only person who's been a guest on the Long Form for every season that I've been. So this is actually your 3rd time. And it tells me that you have something special to give, and you have a certain level of knowledge that does not exist elsewhere. I cannot find it elsewhere. And so having you again is an absolute pleasure.
Okay. It's probably because I've been, maybe I'm already the 3rd time here, your guest, but I've been a guest in every possible war that Congo has known since Mobutu.
Oh, you were there. Were you in Congo in 96?
Of course, I was in Congo in 96. At that time, I was based in Kigali, mainly working for Reuters television, covering all the conflicts in this region, Eastern Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, you name it. I also worked in Somalia, some other African countries, but I was mainly focused on the events here in this region.
I'd like to ask you, so you've been a reporter here and you've seen every single war in the Congo. I'm going to ask you, I'd like to ask you, what is it about Congo that it has failed to fix itself? Because think about what you're saying. This is 28 years since the civil war to remove Mobutu.
So
why has it never stabilized?
If you talk about Mobutu, you're talking about post-colonial Congo, Zaire, which was already a kind of a failed state before it started to exist, and of the making of the Belgians who declared the country independent. They accepted, but who installed a regime that would be easy to control and easy to rule. That was Mobutu, and they allowed him to become one of the most corrupt leaders in Africa, with all the consequences, a failed state. Yeah, and that translated itself in a situation in which Mobutu became a liability for the Americans and the Belgians to further rule the country, and they wanted him replaced by others. So at that time, at the same time, there was the genocide in Rwanda, during which thousands of Rwandans fled to neighboring countries, to Zaire, to Tanzania, to Burundi. So, and that created a completely different setting.
So it was already a failed state.
It was, of course, it was a failed state. It was
even before the Rwandans got involved.
Oh man, it was one of the most failed states amongst the failed states in Africa. I mean, at that time, Zaire was already number one.
Had you been to Zaire before '96?
Of course, I've been there. My parents, yeah. I mean, I was in Congo when I was a kid. I was in Congo in the 80s several times. I did freelance work for Belgian newspapers. I also came to Rwanda during that period. I was in Congo in 1990, just after the first attack of the Patriotic Front in Gabiro. I worked in Masisi, Rutshuru. I witnessed the Magrevi uprising. That was the Hutu revolts in Masisi and Rutshuru. They were mainly focusing already on Tutsis. So I witnessed all that. So during the beginning of the 90s, I was based in Southeast Asia. I was living in Thailand, but working for a Japanese news agency, and they sent me back many times to this region to collect pictures.
One of the things that I hear or see on social media is this idea that before Rwanda got involved in Congo, life there was perfect. Before '96 and everything was great. And what was life actually like in the then Zaire? What did you see? How were people living? Were things really that great?
No, things weren't that great, but things were much better than they are now. Mobutu was much more tolerant towards different groups, different ethnic groups. Mobutu also had a different strategy. If Mobutu had to deal with opposition or wars in the country of people who were rising up against them, for him it was very simple. He invited them to Badurit and he bribed them. So the problem solved. So I also hear from people, for instance, in the Bagogwe Kongomani Tutsi community, that there was a better understanding for their cause by Mobutu than it was the case after the genocide here. But it all switched terribly into the wrong direction with in the beginning of the 90s, when through mostly Agat Habyarimana and Habyarimana, Rwandan Hutus were looking for extra, what you call in German Lebensraum, and Mobutu promised them land in the Kivus. So then the first pogroms on Tutsi community started in 91, 93.
Let's go very, very slowly. So obviously now we're talking about the early 90s.
Yeah.
So are you saying that there was a deal between Mobutu and the Habyarimana regime
Yes.
that Mobutu would give land
Yeah.
to Rwandans?
Yeah. Even Habyarimana, he got big stretches of land in that region.
And were they giving them free land, or were they giving them land that belonged to Congolese Tutsis?
I don't know who exactly belonged the land to, but it was given to him. Also, before that period, there was a fairly friendly cohabitation between Congolese Hutus, and most of them arrived in that region in the 20s and the 30s, because those were the people that were brought into Congo by the Belgian colonizers to work on their land, on their fields, in their farms, and the local Bagogwe community. So they lived together quite peacefully. There was no big problems. For instance, the family of my wife was living in a small village called Bilamisu. It's just outside Mwesu, Kichanga. And they lived quite peacefully with the local Hutu population that was living there as well. So, but that all changed in the beginning of the 90s, when the Hutu radicals from Rwanda came into that region and set up the local Hutu population against the Tutsis that were living there. And then that resulted in the first killings. So a lot of Tutsis already fled during that time. This is also one of the reasons why in the Bagogwe Tutsi community, Kagame raised a lot of popularity, because for them it was simple: we don't want to get killed. Let's go and help Kagame win his war in Rwanda, liberate Rwanda, and then come back to Congo. This is really embedded in their heads, in their minds. It's a long story.
Yeah,
it's a long form.
I would like to maybe go from the 90s to today.
Yeah,
it's been almost a month now that M23 took over Goma.
No, it's not a month.
It's close. It's close to a month. By the time this podcast comes out, it will be close to a month. So, and you were there. You've been there. You were there for about 5 days.
Yeah.
Now, because obviously I haven't had the chance to go, maybe I'll go in the next when things kind of settle down. I'm not an adventure journalist.
That's also when I will go back, because now you can't do anything there.
I would like to have a sense of what you saw with your own eyes. What is the state of the city? Has it been cleaned up? Are people getting back to work? And more importantly, do the people appreciate the new M23 administration?
It's a knife with two sharp edges. Okay, M23 took the city, and I will also tell you, you told me to give details, provide details. The intention was not to take the city this fast.
What do you mean?
They first wanted to push for Bukavu.
So that's in South Kivu.
Yeah, South Kivu, that's the airport of Bukavu. Put pressure on Bukavu, encircle harder or better Goma, mount the pressure on Goma, so that it would be easier to move in. But I hear, and I have rather good information, that they changed plans. So to move into Goma, said they went faster than they intended to go first.
Why did they change plans?
There was news and information that the Interahamwe, the FDLR, and the FRDC were planning to provoke Rwanda, and they also got news for possible killings.
Killings inside the city.
Yeah, inside the city. So then they changed plans, and then they moved on to Goma.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you haven't answered my question though. How are the Goma residents looking at the new rebels?
It's a 50-50 situation. I mean, part of them are happy that they're there because they restore order. The part of the population was also not averse to the cause of M23. The city was just completely surrounded. Was economically down. Business became difficult. It was also for IDPs, people who were looking for shelter in Goma, impossible.
IDPs are the internally displaced people.
So it's like refugees. They were the army, the Congolese army blocked them there. They refused to let them go back to their villages because M23 already liberated a big chunk of northern Kivu. So they could not go back. They got news from their relatives and their friends that the situation in their villages under M23 control was safe and stable. So they were blocked there. So for these people, they welcomed the M23. And of course, also, the Tutsi population that was targeted by these Wazalendo and by the FDLR and by the FRDC, that was also very happy. Don't forget also that the FRDC Tshisekedi equipped hundreds, not to say even thousands, of young people with machine guns to send them to the front line. These so-called Wazalendo, untrained people, undisciplined people who were ruling the waves in Goma at that time, stealing, robbing, looting, raping, so without any punishment, so they could do whatever they want. So the part of the population was happy that the M23 showed up. But don't forget that the whole propaganda machine in Congo has been turning around for several years now. So a lot of people were weary of these M23 rebels, of which they thought that they were Rwandans. So they didn't trust them. So I think M23 has to prove itself now in being correct. If we talk about my first impression when I arrived in Goma, when you pass the Grand Barrière, you enter a fairly clean town. It was cleaned up. They picked up all the bodies that were there. I didn't see any bodies in the street because I was on another job also. I was following one of my colleagues, Colette Brackman, on whom they're producing a documentary movie now about her career of 50 years working in Congo. I was taking footage of that video. So, but it allowed me to contact a lot of people because Colette, everybody knows Colette Brackman. It's very easy for Colette to contact people and they accept immediately to talk to us. So I also talked to them. So, but the city was cleaned up. Goma always had the reputation of being a cleaner city than, for instance, Bukavu, because if you walk into Bukavu, the city looks like a garbage belt with houses constructed very chaotically and things like that. Goma is less the case. So I also heard that they also told me that the new local authorities already organized in Uganda, so people cleaned the streets. The streets were clean. We saw a lot of people walking around, moving around. We saw the first shops open. We saw big supermarkets open. We saw all that. We also talked to several people in the street, and they told us what I just told you. Yeah. So that's the first impression. When we arrived in Goma, there were still very small pockets of resistance between brackets, but I think it was more like Wazalendo or FDLR.
So you could still hear bullets.
Sometimes, but not a lot. It was more like small groups of people or individuals being armed with machine guns, going looting at night. They were hiding out amongst local population, and also they were hiding out in these IDP camps. But M20, as most of the IDP camps of refugee camps started emptying themselves and people going back to their villages, and also M23 told them to go back to their villages. So these people less and less were able to hide. So I think that's nearly finished now. Situation is under control.
That's interesting because some of the media that I'm seeing, some of the reporting that I'm seeing from some of the Western media is that there's a crime wave in Goma.
Yeah, but what do they expect? If you first arm thousands of near criminals, street gangs, and stick the name Wazalendo on that, then you're asking for trouble. You just can't disarm a bunch like that in 1 hour or 1 day. So no, the population was saying that there was already less harassment towards the local population. There was no army in the streets anymore that stopped people and asked for bribes or bakshish. There is no, the police is not croaking any longer the local population. Situation has become more easy for people to move around. Security already now is much better than it was during the period that FRDC was there. So that's what they told us.
I'd like to ask, so one of the things that they kept talking about during the fight for Goma was that there was no electricity, there was no water, and there was no internet, as well as, if I'm not mistaken, telecommunication services.
Yeah.
What is the state of those essential services?
There is internet now, but it doesn't function well. Electricity, we had electricity most of the time. Of course, I was staying in a guest house. I was not staying in a very expensive hotel, but it worked. So there was also water. We asked also the local population in the cities about these things. They said that it was possible to have water, also some electricity, not all day. Sometimes it was cut off. It went off and on, but they could come by.
How about banking services? Banking services,
banking
schools?
Services are closed. Schools, I saw yesterday they tried to reopen schools, but the teachers were present, but not a lot of kids. There's still some hesitance with the elders of these kids to send them to school.
Well, the M23/AFC leadership have to figure out how to manage Goma, a city of almost 2 million people. I mean, that's literally almost the size of Kigali.
That's more as Brussels.
So, and this is not just a city that's a normal city. It's also a city that has undergone, like you said, war, issues with essential services, guns in the wrong hands. So that's a huge problem. It's actually, if I think about it, it's a monumental problem. It almost reminds me of not at the same scale, but maybe what the RPA had to deal with when
Kinshasa.
they took over took over Kigali after the genocide. Almost not that full level, but
you can't compare.
Of course, I understand. But what I mean is, it's a sense of that complexity of having to deal with security issues, having to deal with humanitarian issues, having to deal with people who are traumatized, and even having to deal with what I call bread and butter issues.
Yeah.
Garbage collection, Muganda, like you said, the things that make a city work, a city of that size. Because if things go wrong, and there's, for example, a cholera outbreak, that
It's
would
possible.
it's a disaster. So I want to ask, with when you think about the M23 rebels, they've done a really good job of fighting,
Yeah,
but now they have to administer,
yeah.
and those are two different things. I want to, and I know that you've maybe even talked to them, and you've had a chance to share your thoughts, and you've heard their thoughts. I'm sure you've even asked them this question that I'm going to ask you.
Yes.
How ready is the M23 to administer not just Goma, but even the larger territory it has now captured?
Yeah. I think this will happen twofold. First of all, the M23 is well intentioned. They're not there to grab things or to fill their pockets. Two, they're disciplined. Also, in their administration, people who have political functions, administrative functions, and things like that. It's all organized in a rather military way.
Mm.
So, but of course, like 1 month ago, they still were sitting under a tree or in small houses in Rutshuru and Bunagana, and for them this is also new. So, what I wrote an article, my last article that I published on my blog was exactly about all this. I warned them, and people were warning us that taking Goma too quickly could end up in a bloodbath, which it didn't happen. I mean, for me, I was happy to hear that there were only 3,000 killed.
What did you expect?
I expected the worst. People like me, we only think in worst case scenarios.
So what was your worst case scenario?
My worst case scenario is what we often saw in the past, which really happened, like in Kibeho, like in Tingitingi, Lubutu, in Congo, where the Interahamwe and the bad guys mixed with the local population and refused to let them go and started using them as a shield, provoking a reaction that ended up really badly, with thousands of people killed. And then after putting the blame on the Rwandan army and on the rebels of Rohan Kabila. So I was fearing it would be that, because the same individuals and groups that were responsible for those acts in the past were also present in Congo, in Goma, and they were cornered like rats, and that made them really unpredictable and really dangerous.
So why didn't they do that?
These people, I mean, I've been following them, most of my life. I've been talking to them. I've been hanging out with them. I even went
These people, you mean the FDLR?
Yeah, FDLR. I told you already. I mean, we even went to see them in Masisi up until 3 years ago. And they received me. I talked to them. They knew who I was. And they didn't touch me because I was talking to them, and they were talking to me. Now, I was sniffing them out, and they were sniffing me out. I talked to everybody. They even told me, we can kill you because we know who you are. You're married to that and that woman. You're living in Rwanda. You're good friends with the regime there. But they talked to me. And of course, I was working with Congolese people I could trust, so that I could get out also. So, I did that. I talked to everybody. So, so to understand them, how they think. So they always had this strategy of hiding between civilians, innocent people. The whole strategy of the Muchengezi revolt here in Rwanda, that was partially financed by Laurent Kabila, was also based on that strategy.
Hiding among innocent people.
Putting ambushes on the roads, blocking the roads with stones, with cut trees, putting kids and old people in front, blocking matatus, blocking cars, and killing everybody who was inside. I saw that happen. I drove one time into an ambush like that.
How did you survive the ambush?
I crashed right into them.
Into the fighters?
The fighters were coming down the hill.
So you just went right through the barrier?
Yeah, man. There was kids, there were old women.
I can't imagine how you felt about it. War is a terrible thing.
Yeah, but I had to do it, man. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And then this is not the only situation in which something like that happened to me. And this is also one of the reasons why this is also one of the reasons why I try to keep on working on that topic. I'm not neutral. I've lived through things. I've had my experiences, but I think that the experience that people like me have can be useful to avoid problems like that in the future.
I think
I was really pessimistic about
Goma.
the possible fall of Goma. So I knew that if they would move too fast, that this could end up man. I really cry, man.
Thankfully, it did not happen.
No, because most of the people that died, we went to check it on in Goma, were people who were looting other people's houses, and when they came out with the goods on their backs, they were shot down by the Wazalendo and by the FRDC, who looted these things on their dirt. So also the people who died in that prison, they fell victim to gas boilers that exploded.
So you're talking about I think now you're talking about there's a story of a women's prison that was burnt.
Yes.
And hundreds of women died. And the way the international media is spinning it, they're making it seem as if M23 somewhat caused their death.
That's the narrative also of Patrick Moya in Kinshasa immediately, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Wagner, that woman that speaks English perfectly and that passes really well in Europe. She has a professional way of communicating. She's sharp, but she's lying. So that to blame the M23 of killing these people, but actually we got. I was talking to people of MSF, to other people, neutral
people. That's Médecins Sans Frontières.
Yeah, who told us that it was not the case. They really told us what was happening. I also have my guys in Goma I work with all the time.
So what happened?
What I told you, I mean, people got killed looting and...
No, I'm talking about I heard the first part about the people who got killed looting. I'm now asking about the women prisoners.
Yeah.
What happened in that case? How did they get burnt?
Okay, so the women prisoners, and some of them had kids in jail, were staying in cells. So when the other prisoners fled, they also tried to flee. But there was gunfire outside of jail. So they went back into jail to protect themselves. But at the time, the jail was already burning, and there were gas boilers in that gas tubes that exploded, and that killed most of them.
How many were there? How many women?
160 on maybe, or 180 on 220 women were killed. And the bodies, when we went to see there, were still out there, or part of them in body bags outside that jail.
So back to the question, which was about, so you've given us almost a sense of everything that could go wrong.
But things didn't go wrong the way I feared. And it's relatively under control. And then the M23 showed professionalism. And also, don't remember that part of the FRDC were cornered near the airport. And so they fought back. And also, some of them fought back out of conviction. They didn't just surrender and run away. They fought back. So people also got killed in the crossfire. Like the whole discussion about the airport, for instance, that M23 doesn't want to open the airport for humanitarian aid. And also they were criticized for that. That's also partly bullshit, because the whole airport is full of unexploded stuff, rockets that fell, rockets that are still sitting in the tarmac, unexploded. They have to demine and clean up that mess before they can start using it at the airport again. You know what I mean? Also, like, how did the South Africans get killed?
You tell me. I don't know.
It's not because of the M23. I mean, the Congolese army started shelling Rubavu.
So that was, if I'm not mistaken, on a Sunday. Was it Sunday?
I don't remember,
Monday.
but they started shelling Rubavu.
Just before the fall of Goma.
And they were using the South African troops as a shield, because they were shooting from behind over their heads. So, and that attracted fire from M23. And in that process, the South Africans were killed.
How do you know this to be true?
I have that from several sources. Even people that were concerned, that were there. Yeah. So that's what they tell me. I mean, I can just relate what they tell me. I mean, I can be mistaken about certain small details, but I think I get the big picture.
So you've given us a sense of the way things could have gone and the way things are today. Now, I want to have a better understanding of, again, back to what I said. You said that you started everything by saying that the M23 fundamentally were people from the hills. They were, they were in trees. They are sitting under trees. They are small huts.
No, that's
no.
Yeah.
Let me land. But now they're managing one of Congo's biggest cities.
Yeah.
It's one thing being a great fighter.
Yeah.
It's another thing being a great administrator of civilians and civilian issues.
Yes.
Do you think that the M23 will be able to manage to administer not security, because maybe that's what they're good at, but all the other functions of a city and of, I guess, real leadership?
That's what I'm worried about, because they don't have that that know-how in the house. They have to attract other people for it, and probably also convince the honest people that were working before for the Congolese government to integrate in that process, to work with them. I'm sure they will. But then you have another problem: who's going to pay for these people?
That's what I was going to ask you.
etc. It's a whole structure. Okay, in this case, it's easy because the Congolese government never paid their salaries, but yeah, something has to be put in exchange. Otherwise that can't function. They already started now by nominating a governor, a vice governor, which
Even a mayor
a mayor.
of
I don't
Goma.
know who the mayor is, but I know, for instance, the governor
Mm,
out of my dark past.
mm,
And I have to admit it, I'm not really happy with that guy.
mm.
But it can be a move to calm down certain groups in Masisi and Rutshuru.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to meet and talk to people from the humanitarian organizations who are now working in Goma?
Yeah.
If you did, what are they telling you about the humanitarian situation in Goma, in terms of the internally displaced people, in terms of some of the services that they were giving? Médecins Sans Frontières.
Yes.
We're talking about Red Cross.
Yeah.
What is the state of not just Goma, maybe, but again, there's the whole North Kivu that we don't really talk about. What is the true humanitarian situation in that
The
area?
humanitarian situation is a disaster.
Mm,
People need help. People are being blocked. Don't have access to food, medicine. Well, most of the medicine was looted
by who?
by the FRDC and by the Wazalendo. Like, for instance, we visited a hospital in Goma that was run by the Red Cross. Okay, I wanted to film there. They didn't allow me to film. I respected that. When they were Colette Brackman, but we talked to them. They were quite happy about the laissez-faire of M23. They can move around freely. But I said, we don't have lots of wounded there. People with with bullet wounds, shrapnel, people that were burned, that they lack medicine. So they badly need medicine because most of the medicine was looted. So we also went to a hospital in Sake that was run previously by MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières, and that got looted. So they told us we can't really help anyone because we were completely looted. And then we went to another hospital, really strange story, in Kiroche, which is...
Where is that?
Kiroche is at the entrance of Masisi, near the lake, near Minova.
How close is it to Goma?
I think about 30, 40 kilometers. Okay. So where the hospital was, completely intact, with 4 tons of medicine still there.
Why was it not touched?
Because of 2 nurses. There was one guy, an old guy, and a woman. She was a femme sage, how you say, she was a nurse for children, who stayed in the hospital all this time when the area was under the control of Wazalendo, FDLR, who refused to let him in, who also, they worked out a way to treat also sick FDLR, sick Wazalendo, guys with gunshots. They helped them, but they made it possible that the hospital was left intact. Of course, when the M23 came, they left them alone. They even protected them. Yeah, that made the hospital can start functioning tomorrow, or already maybe today or yesterday. We went there like 2-4 days ago.
I'm very confused. So one of the things that we saw during the war, when there was a lot of reporting about the conflict, was the IDPs, the internally displaced people, where you'd see almost 200, 300, almost 500,000 people in little sheeted camps around Goma and Mugunga and all these areas. And now I'm seeing reports about them being told to go back to their villages. How does that one work? Have you seen that happening? Did you talk to M23 about it?
Yeah, I talked to the guy in charge of all this within M23 is Colonel Julien. He's known the gear as Che Guevara. He's a real capable guy, really smart guy, real social guy. He was the one who ordered M23 troops when they was fighting in Kinshasa a couple of years ago, for which M23 was blamed to have killed many civilians, but it was not true. So
how do you know it wasn't true? You say it's not true. How do you know that it wasn't true?
We went there. We had evidence. We even took film there, and we interviewed people. We took people witnessed in front of the camera. We know what went wrong. The people that were killed there was not more than 20 that got caught in the crossfire and not executed, like Patrick Muya has said, and you and a group of experts. And then after we brought out that story, they shut up saying that.
So back to the humanitarian situation and how the IDPs, the internally displaced people, how do they go back to their villages? Why were they sent back? What will they eat?
No, about the NGOs and no, but the humanitarian situation of these people being sent back. So I can tell you that
because you said it's a big mess.
Yeah, there is no help for these people now.
So then why did the M23...
They don't get food.
So then help me understand. Then why would the M23 ask them to go back to their villages?
Because there's several reasons. Because they've been there and they've been obliged by the FRDC and the FDLR and all these armed groups to stay there. They were not allowed to go back to their villages. So a lot of them already went back. So the camps already were emptying themselves, but a certain group of them stayed. These were the people that know that when they left there, some of these people have been staying there for 2-3 years already, and their land has been stolen and taken by others. So they don't have anything to go back to.
So then how will the M23 deal with that issue?
I cannot tell you, man. That's a big question. That's a good question. But they will have to deal with it. And I hope that the international community will jump in with aid, like the World Food Program, UNICEF, all these. They have to move in there and help these people.
When you spoke to the M23, when you spoke to the gentleman whose name is known as Che Guevara.
Yeah, Che Guevara.
Did he seem like he had a plan? What was his plan?
He told me basically the same thing as I tell you now. I mean, they're working on it and they're willing to solve that problem.
I'm going to continue, but and ask another question, but I don't feel satisfied by that answer because
I'm not feeling satisfied by my answer either.
Because you're telling people to go.
Yeah.
But then you're not telling them where to go.
They're not
and
pushing
how to
them
survive
back with a gun pointed at their heads. So I think they're realistic enough to understand that. So yeah, it's a problem and things have to happen. It's like MSF was telling us, we have to find a solution to bring in medicine. We have to find a solution to bring in food, blankets, things like that, tools to work with in these hospitals, operating tables, things like that, lights, whatever, tools to treat people,
doctors,
etc. So I think the good thing is that the staff already came back. So they were there. They were talking to MSF. So yeah, so that's it. I think that the international community should jump in.
So what you're telling me sounds like the M23 is really just consolidating its grip or power
Yeah,
around both Goma, but also around the North Kivu region. I would
yes.
like to ask you, what do you think the M23's likely next step is?
Next step is taking Kavumu airport.
Kavumu is where?
Is the airport of Bukavu. It's like 25 kilometers north of Bukavu.
So that's in South Kivu now. So they're moving
Yeah.
south.
That was their initial plan
Hmm.
before taking Goma. So that's what they're doing now.
Why Kavumu?
Because if you take Kavumu, you deny FRDC to counterattack and to move in supplies to do that.
I've heard that in Kavumu Airport, there's still some Sukhoi fighter jets and
There
drones.
was also one Sukhoi in Goma.
Hmm.
That's possible. There's also drones. That was the drone base. There's also Burundian soldiers there. Actually, the Burundians fought yesterday or the day before again with M23, losing a lot of men. So that's possible. I think Kavumu is being defended by Burundians mainly, but they will chase them away, and then they will move on to Bukavu. Bukavu is already a big mess now. They wouldn't even have to fight hard to get into town.
What do you mean a big mess?
And the town is being looted by deserting FRDC, Wazalendo, that are running away from North Kivu, moving into Bukavu, moving on to Burundi, South Kivu. They take whatever they can, they kill, they rape. So it's a big mess. We even got news in Bukavu from friends that I trust really in Bukavu. They told me that FRDC was fighting amongst them.
Among themselves?
Yes. FRDC was fighting Wazalendo. They were fighting with FDLR. You know, it was worse than an Asterix Obelix story. So then, at the end of the day, if M23 advances and they're standing like 5-10 kilometers from the city, these guys will flee. They will move on southwards.
And then what?
Hmm?
And then what happens? Let's say
Then
they take
the
Bukavu.
M23 will walk into Bukavu, occupy the city, and then follow them to Uvira.
Now, for those who don't know Uvira, where is Uvira?
Uvira is, okay, we're already in the triangle between Rwanda with Changugu, Bugarama, Bukavu, at Lake Kivu, and then also Uvira. Uvira is the city, a small city that is at the border with Burundi, not far from Cibitoke and Bugarama, but it's border Congo, Burundi. So it's also at Lake Tanganyika. So, and there is a road bringing you from Bukavu to Uvira. Is what we call the escarpement. It's a big hill, and if you go down that hill, it's like zigzagging. You have to go down because it's really steep. This is the way IFDL took Bukavu during the First Congo War.
So what you're saying is that from when we're recording today, Kavumu might fall.
Yeah.
Which is below Goma.
They're now in Ihusi Kalehe, which is, but I know they're further because I talked off the record to a couple of officers on the spot. They're near Kahuzi Biega,
And
which
where
is the
that?
big park. The big park.
Is it? So for people
It's
who
a little
don't
bit
know,
from off the lake, but beside Bukavu, it's like the Virunga Park, the Volcano National Park. But then in South Kivu, you also have gorillas there. But it's a different type of gorilla. It's lowland gorillas.
So it would seem that M23 is, its strategy is to almost take all of that eastern flank. So
Yeah.
you start in maybe Goma, Bukavu,
Yeah.
Uvira, and then it just controls
And
all
then
of
maybe
that.
also continue on to Kalemi, but not further than that.
And then Kalemi is even below.
Yeah, because there's also a big airstrip there that the enemy or their enemy can use to reinforce.
I'd like to ask you.
And then there is something you forget.
Hmm.
If the FRDC, the Interahamwe, and the Wazalendo will run into Burundi, and if General Neva is going
Who is the
to,
president of Burundi?
who is the president of Burundi,
Ndayishimiye.
will offer them shelter, he will be walking on very thin ice. Because the whole Burundian army is already against him, not the big chunk of the Burundian army. And we know because we talked to some of the officers on the phone with WhatsApp and Signal. And
You're talking to the Burundian officers?
yeah, people in Bujumbura and people in Congo. They talk to us because they want to be nice to us. They want to, because they know what's hanging over their heads. So they tell us, we don't want to do this. We don't want to fight here. A lot of Burundian Tutsi elements from the army already deserted and ran over to M23.
Mm.
So they don't want to be used as cannon fodder by this crazy president in Bujumbura. They don't want to die. Already, a lot of deserters returned to Bujumbura, and they were arrested and for fleeing the battlefield. So the army is becoming weary of their president, and they might turn their coat in 2 seconds if the M23 shows up in Burundi.
Why? Wait.
And there is also other groups.
No, hold on. Let's go slowly.
Yeah, it's a mess.
We need to make sense of this. So right now, I think most of our listeners or viewers know that, yes, the Burundian army is fighting alongside the DRC government, that is also alongside Wazalendo, is also alongside FDLR. Right now, they're fighting in South Kivu.
Yeah.
Because I think North Kivu is almost clean. So South Kivu.
Yeah.
How then does that fight in South Kivu then become an issue in Burundi itself?
It's very easy to explain. If Burundi will provide this pure military logic, if Burundi will provide the possibility at Tshisekedi to send in troops from Kinshasa by plane or by boat or whatever, it could become a staging point for a counteroffensive.
Okay.
That's one. Two, everybody's fed up with General Neva. The country is economically dead. They're losing all their international support. The army is partially against him. So all the ingredients are there to send him out to chase him.
So are you saying that the M23 trying to maybe either fight all the way down, would then somehow find themselves on the other side of the border?
Maybe they don't even have to do a lot, I think, to chase off Neva. If they just muscle up, the guy might already disappear.
For people who don't understand the size of Congo, that region that you're telling me is much larger than Rwanda.
Oh yeah.
Much
Yeah.
larger. And the idea is that M23 maybe has a maximum 4,000 troops, maybe 5,000.
I think now it's a little bit more, but yeah, okay.
It's about that number. They're not more than 10,000
No,
soldiers.
I
So then
think
the
more,
question-
6,000, yeah.
So the question then I must ask is this. How does it work? Because as you move forward,
Yeah.
you know you need more and more troops.
And you stretch out.
You're very stretched because you even have to protect.
Yes,
Your
rear
rear.
guard. And don't forget also the north, up Burundi.
Exactly.
Yeah, where you also have a FRDC presence. They could come down from Beni Butembo, but it's not so likely because there you also have a Ugandan presence.
So I'm very confused. What do you mean by the Ugandan presence? Presence to do what? I know the Ugandans.
They collaborate with FRDC.
I know that the Ugandans are
For
fighting
ADF.
against ADF, but then why would the Ugandans stop the FRDC from moving south?
Because they don't want problems at their border. That's one. Secondly, I think the Ugandan authorities are in favor of M23, especially with General Muhoozi, also with Muzi Museveni, who already expressed himself several times in favor of negotiations with M23 and blah, blah, blah. So the likelihood of an offensive from out
the
of
north
that
is
corner
very-
is less.
So, but that's the thing. So if they're moving south,
Yeah.
they have not more than 8,000 troops. They are fighting against two countries. So FRDC, they're Congolese. They're also fighting the Burundians. They're also fighting.
It's not,
The
it's not two
Wazalendo, they
countries, it's
also-
one common enemy.
But what I want to, but then I want to show you, they're fighting
Yeah.
against people who might have 40, 50, 60,000 troops. How is it possible that they will keep moving south and take over Uvira and Kalemi?
They won't be able to do more than that.
But then but you still haven't answered the question. How is it, because you can dream of
I'm
doing
not
things.
dreaming.
No. You can dream of, I want to do this.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the means to do this, you're not going to be able to do it.
The
How do
means-
they have the means?
You don't need a lot of means to push Neva out, because the means are already in his own backyard, his own army. Don't forget Anton Raza, people like that, FNL, who hate Neva's guts. He's having problems with his old collaborator Prim. So they all want him to be replaced. So you don't need an occupying army to push Neva out.
But then you do need an occupying army, I feel, to control that whole Eastern Bloc.
Yeah.
Is
That's
it-
why they will have to reinforce. They will have to step up their security forces. They recruit more youngsters to do that. But this is also one of the reasons why Corneille Nanga's theory that he will march on Kinshasa will simply not be possible.
They don't have the people.
They don't have the people to do that. And it's not those thousands of FRDC prisoners of war that are now in Ruangabo that are going to do that job.
There's been a group of people in South Kivu fighting against the government.
Yeah. Makanika.
People like Makanika. I've been hearing this group called Twirwaneho.
Yeah.
Are they likely to form partnerships with M23
Of course.
to?
They're already doing that. Like Makanika already exchanged, sent officers and to train in the M23 zone to make them more battle weary because they're lacking a lot of experience. So they were already exchanged. They talk already.
You know, one of the most interesting things for me is that this M23 fight
Yeah.
is fundamentally
Yeah.
a civil conflict. It's an internal conflict.
Yes.
It's
yes.
a group of Congolese
Yeah.
fighting against other Congolese, but it has fundamentally also taken a regional
Dimension.
angle,
Yeah.
a regional dimension. I want to ask, by the end of, in your estimation, by the end of this conflict, whenever it happens, what do you think the region will look like in terms of how it does politics and even perhaps its leadership?
The best outcome would be, and again, it all could have been avoided if Tshisekedi would have accepted 1-2 years ago to talk to the M23, to negotiate with them. It was always too easy for him to say or to try to convince the outside world that the M23 in fact was a Rwandan outfit and part of the RDF, and all on different other cliches that the Rwandans were in it to loot minerals, blah blah blah, to balkanize Congo, and so on and so on. This is really important because he could pump that into a lot of minds, not only of his own population, who doesn't know the history of their own country, but also the international community. Even with a lot of hatred messages and hatred theories that came with it. This is a big crime, I think. We always attack this in our articles, in our video messages. We did that, but to no prevail, because media-wise, the M23 always remained discriminated also, by the foreign media, who were also copying that narrative of Muyaya and, the group of experts.
Why? Why do you think the international media has decided that the M23 are the monsters?
Because they also have this cliche in their heads that, all M23, that, now I'm going to say something that some people might get angry when I say, that all Tutsis are Rwandans. It's really, if you walk into Hotel Lenda now in Goma and you start discussing these things with the foreign press, foreign media that are there, they will come out in the street with you. You see a patrol coming by of M23, said, the Rwandans. I said, they're not Rwandans. They're M23. These kids are Congolese. How do you know that? Because I know the officer that's with them. He's from Mushaki, Masisi. I don't know the soldiers, because I've never seen them. So it's too easy to say they're Rwandan, because they have the same faces, the same morphology. They're wearing nearly the same helmets as the Rwandan army. They're actually the cheapest helmets on the market you can buy. They're coming from China. So, and they got them to protect their soldiers. So they wear different uniforms, but they don't even look at that. And then they call them Rwandans. How can you say that? Where are you basing yourself on? You understand? It's too easy. They're full of they just come to cover the conflict. They read the VN report, or maybe half. They base themselves on a couple of other newspaper articles they find in Europe before they left, and that's it. And they want to produce news. So they're all running around there, chasing M23 media staff, the M23 bosses for interviews. They go into town, they go to the jail, they go to the airport, they go into in the cité and in the popular areas of Goma. They might go to Sake. And then yesterday, day before, I saw France 24. They went far south. And they also sent a friend of mine, a foreign journalist, which I worked a lot in Congo long ago, with one of my fixers, local producers down south. They came back yesterday evening. But they escaped the M23 media people. I told them how to do that. Because M23 is not showing them anything. They're not up to that, Yeah. So that's it. But the cliche is there. And then come other cliches, like the whole thing about minerals.
Tell me about that.
There was no question of minerals until M23 took over Rubaya mine, the coltan mine, which is the biggest, one of the biggest mines of the area. It belonged to, what was his name?
Mangachuchu, yes. Who was...
Mangachuchu was a very rich, round-the-phone guy who made he made a lot of money with the Congolese government. Before, the people who were working in the mine were all ex-Interahamwe who were getting part of the cake, and the minerals were sold at the highest bidder. So then Mangachuchu got arrested in Kinshasa, basically for being a Tutsi. I think he's still in jail.
I think they gave him a life sentence.
Yeah. So he can be lucky that they didn't kill him. So I know his son really well, Ben. I sometimes talk to him. So then at that time, the mine was taken over by the FDLR and the Congolese government. And the mining profit was given at a certain point to the Burundians in exchange for cannon fodder, troops. This is a true story. It was confirmed. So it's not more than logic that M23 takes it back. So I don't know where the minerals go now, but up until that point, there was no question about. They couldn't justify criticizing Rwanda, between brackets, and M23 of looting minerals because it was simply not at the order. I told them, see, when you go to take Rubaya, they will start hitting you with that argument, and they did. So that's number one. There's a couple of other mines, especially in South Kivu. You have also mineral, you have gold mines, things like that. So yeah, that's it. So we're talking about minerals. What's the other question?
I asked you about how at the end of this conflict, how do you see the region? And when I mean the region, I don't mean Congo itself. I mean the larger SADC or East African Community region. How would it look like?
I think it will look like fairly the same as it looked like before. Another cliche is that Rwanda wants to balkanize Congo, which is complete crap as an argument. Rwanda never said that. Rwanda learned a lot from the mistakes they made in the past during the other wars. So they didn't want to get involved 2 years ago. And, Tshisekedi forced them by introducing the Interahamwe, the FDLR, and Wazalendo into his fighting force, forced Rwanda in taking proactive measures.
It's funny that you say that it will look the same, but earlier you also said that if things don't change, that one of the presidents in the region might be overthrown.
Yeah, there will actually be two presidents, I think.
Oh, so the first president is?
Tshisekedi.
Wait, let's go slowly. So you think that Tshisekedi will be why will he be overthrown?
But he can't justify just losing 2 towns. His opposition is on his heels. The people of Congo are starting to look through all their lies. People of Eastern Congo don't like Tshisekedi. I talked even to people in Katanga, who are getting more and more in favor of M23. I see people like Katumbi.
That's Moise Katumbi.
Moise Katumbi and his assistant, what's his name, getting more and more verbal and accusing the government of all the problems.
So for people who don't know Moise Katumbi, who is he?
Katumbi is one of the most important politicians in Katanga. So he's a very rich guy. He's a business guy. He's also highly corrupt. They're all corrupt, but the one is less corrupt than the other, and the one is less smart than the other. You understand what I mean? So Katumbi would actually be the best choice of all the bad choices. Katumbi would be the guy that could, with Katumbi, don't forget, he was at the inauguration of Donald Trump in America. So he has some leverage internationally.
So let me play you a scenario.
So I think
let me play you a scenario. If Goma falls, and then Bukavu falls, how long does Tshisekedi have before he's overthrown?
That I don't know. That can be a week, 2 weeks, 1 month, but it will happen. I think I can be wrong, of course. I also think that, look, all his support from the international community is disappearing. The French have been humiliated because the presence of the mercenaries was mainly on the initiative of General Baril.
Who's General Baril?
That's a French officer that hates the guts of Kagame. They have a long story, because he was the one who brought, indirectly brought these mercenaries there. So they're losing the support also indirect, I think, of South Africans. I saw yesterday, day before, that South Africa, I didn't understand well, was sending new troops. But where are they going to send these troops?
I don't know. You tell me. Where do you think they'll send them?
I don't know. I don't even know what's true. But that has to be checked. Those South Africans were humiliated big time. Their troops are still hiding out in Goma.
Did you have a chance to go and see the South Africans?
No. Also, we didn't ask. I was there to film Colette Brackman and to get the vibe. You understand? The first vibe. And actually, after 4 or 5 days, I was happy to leave. I couldn't. I'm not functioning well in a surrounding like that. It's like a chicken den, with all the journalists staying in Hotel Linda. You have all these officials of M23 that are overwhelmed with questions. They don't have time to sit down with you. They don't have time to talk in detail. They tell you, okay, we see tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Okay, come at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, you're there. Oh, I have only 10 minutes because, I have to do this. Yeah. Just, you understand. Goma also is becoming a magnet. How say that?
What does that mean?
A magnet.
Yes.
For political wannabes that are looking for a second career in Kinshasa, that are looking for a new opportunity to relaunch themselves in politics. Like it was the case during all the other rebellions. This is also why I get this deja vu. I saw a couple of people like that.
This is my last question to you. when I interview you next year
Yeah,
in 2026
yeah.
about
This,
topic, Eastern Congo, M23,
yeah.
what do you think you'll be able to tell me that's new?
What I will tell you what I hope I will be able to tell you. Because I have lots of questions. I had this deja vu feeling when they're not going to fall in the same trap as their predecessors of AFDL, RCD1, 2, Rwanda. Please don't let that happen. I hope they manage to bring back the refugees, to stabilize the situation in the zone they liberated, and then we come back on the thing that they are very thinly stretched. So we have to reinforce already to do that. They have to set up a new administration, probably in collaboration with former administrators that were there, mayors and stuff like that. They have to find a way to deal with the other ethnical groups, communities living in these areas, so that they can talk in peace, that they can negotiate and talk in a normal way and not fight each other. They have to deal with other militias. They have to neutralize them and clean them out, or talk to them so that they will stop doing what they were doing before. That has to happen. But it's too early to judge what will happen. We have to give them the advantage of the doubt that they will do it well. And then judge maybe in 6 months how they are doing it, instead of starting to criticize them when they just started. That would not be honest. Yeah, because for me, I'm engaged in this topic already for 30 years. I'm not completely neutral, but I try to be neutral on their side. I'm not closing my eyes for possible mistakes they will make. And I will write about it like I did in the past. And they didn't like it because they don't have the experience of being criticized. Yeah.
Are you hopeful for the future?
I'm hopeful for the future because it's also very important for Rwanda to have a neighbor. I don't think M23 wants to separate from Congo. I think they just want to install a secure region in which their refugees can come back, reclaim their possessions, their land, their houses, and live with other communities in peace, being protected by their own people, because you can't just integrate M23 into the FRDC and then have again Lingala-speaking soldiers there that are undisciplined and untrained and grabby, because they have a completely different mentality. So I hope that will be the outcome. And then also economically, I think they will be able to surf along the waves that Rwanda is surfing by developing, investing, etc. And then with a little bit of goodwill of the international community, this can work. That's what I hope.
That's what you hope.
But marching on Kinshasa, no way. That's not going to happen. I mean, to change Congo as a whole, it's a huge task, because the Congolese lost every reference that other people have about what is good and what is bad, how to survive, how to make money. For them, they wake up in the morning and they have only one thing in their mind: how to make $5 before the day is finished to feed their family in the evening. So they don't know their history. You see on Congolese TV stations sometimes university professors who are violating the history of their own country by telling the audience the biggest bullshit that is historically incorrect. You saw that too, right? So how can you change these people? It would take one generation to change all that.
Can Congo be fixed?
I'm skeptical about that. I wrote already 5 times in my articles that you can compare Congo with an ocean steamer that is lying on the bottom of the ocean, 2 kilometers deep.
So for people
with
who don't,
big holes in
so for people who don't know what an ocean steamer is, it's a big ship
big ship,
that's at the bottom of a
like
what?
container ship,
Yes.
on the bottom of the ocean with big holes in its sides. And through these holes, the water pours in. So it's impossible to lift up the ship to get it out of there. And it's also too deep. But the international community is having other boats afloat with pipes going down to pump the water out of that ship. And it's costing them billions of dollars. But the ship can't come up. And this is not, this is also a mistake of Congolese leaders like Kabila and Mobutu before. But these guys were put there by the international community to serve the purpose of getting the minerals out in an orderly way and in a less expensive way, and the whole logic behind that. So I think, man, it's a huge task, man. It is practically impossible. So, but this example could be the start.
The example
push,
in the East.
Yes. Push the international community. And also, I think that M23 did a very good job in placing the international community in front of their own mirror and start to think that Congo has to change.
I guess now that we've talked about that, in Dar es Salaam a while back, there was a meeting of the East African Community and the Southern African Development Community, SADC. And they said a bunch of things, including negotiations between the government and the M23, as well as ceasefire, opening up humanitarian corridors, Rwanda and the DRC sitting down at a table at a state level within the so-called Rwanda protocols, so that we can see how do we live with each other. Do you think that any of those things will work? And I promise you, this is the last question. Is this just going to be another summit, or do you actually think that there's going to be...
When Kagame said during one of his last press conferences that I attended, that he didn't want to negotiate just for the pleasure of some foreign politicians like the Angolans to host these talks and to show the outside world that they were looking for peace in Congo, as long as Kinshasa would not accept to talk directly to the M23. Because if Rwanda talks on behalf of the M23, that automatically implicates
Rwanda.
And this is what Congo is looking for. So Kagame didn't want to do that anymore, and he got nervous. And also during an interview, he even said, when the journalist asked him, are there Rwandan troops in Congo? He just, I don't know. Because he was fed up and frustrating that always the same question is coming back. He's fed up of wearing the jacket of the big culprit when he's not, because he didn't want this war. Yeah. He didn't ask for it. He was developing his country 2 years ago and everything was going well. And then he saw that how things went in Congo, that they started accusing him and his government of being involved. At a point, they were not involved. And of course, you know how close these two communities are, of these Bagogwe, Tutsi, and a lot of Rwandans. They're relatives. There was lots of sympathy for their cause, also especially when they started killing them and burning them in the street. And have this hatred, genocidal ideology behind the reason why they were being attacked by people like Charles Onana, Jumbo SPRL in Brussels. In the same time, Rwandan services knew well that FDLR was recruiting recruits in Rwanda. It's the truth. We discovered that. We know that. We have witnesses saying that. And these people, they don't lie. So it became serious. At a certain point, people were getting second thoughts. Before we know it, we might have to deal with a second Muchengezi uprising. Don't forget what happened with Rusesabagina, who also walked into Rwanda with, no, not himself, with rebels, with Imbonerakure and FDLR to kill people in Nyungwe. So Rwandans were right to take a harder stand on that. But then you see the UN group of experts claiming that Rwanda has 5,000 or 6,000 troops in Congo. That's completely wrong. You know what I mean? That's fiercely exaggerated, if not completely exaggerated.
Marc,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining me.
Was it clear?
It was very clear. Marc, thanks so much for joining me today. So it was an absolute pleasure. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, I did.
And that's a wrap for this week's episode. Thank you so much for sticking with us until the very end. I'd actually love to hear your thoughts on today's conversation. So drop a comment below and join the discussion. You can also join us on the social media of your choice. And if you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with a friend and invite them to the conversation. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care.